Hello, welcome back to 3 Delirium. My name is AJ, and this week we're going to go over a rather interesting package that I've received in the mail. Well, yes, that means there have been further complications with that truck model from what I guess now would be 2 weeks ago. Why don't you join me and we'll see what we got in the post. Well, as I've mentioned in previous videos, the source of most of my filament until recently was a company in the UK, which is a country that is no longer in the European Union. Seeing as how I live in Ireland, I would be importing kilograms of material from outside the EU, incurring absurdly high import taxes and duty fees. Therefore, I've turned to ordering my filament from a member state. Prusa, the maker of my 3D printer, comes from the Czech Republic, and the Czech Republic just so happens to be another member of the European Union. Prusa makes their own brand of filament called Prusament, and recently I've gotten a whole spool of it in the mail. Now, my curiosity was piqued when I noticed that in the Prusa slicing software there are specially indicated settings for Prusa PLA which are separate from generic PLA. Now, when I use the phrase generic filament in this video, it has nothing to do with the quality of filament. It actually means filament that is not Prusament. I'm actually still using Filamentive's recycled RPLA, and I'm quite happy with its quality. I'm just starting to run low on it. I've always brushed off the Prusament PLA settings as being like a marketing ploy to try and convince users that Prusament is special and set apart from the rest. I figured that why not put this to the test? I have a brand new spool of Prusament that has just arrived, and I have some of the quote generic filament left over still as well. So I took this model of a sheep, which is often included in the thumb drive that comes alongside of Prusa printers. The model itself is supported, endorsed, and made by the people at Prusa as a test print. So I've turned it into a printable file using both generic filament settings as well as Prusament settings. So I'm going to use those two files to print 4 sheep. I'll use generic settings on generic filament, generic settings with Prusament, Prusament settings with Prusament, and Prusament settings with generic filament. So all that's left to do is just hit print and wait. 4 times. Well, here we are, 5 sheep later. Well, yeah, as you can see, with this project, I seem to have uncovered a larger problem. I had 3 out of the 4 sheep finished, and then I noticed this telltale sign that I've seen before. Way back in December of last year, you may remember a video that I made about this exact issue, where the filament is not completely extruded on what would be the fastest of the passes around the model. Now, back then, I didn't have any idea what the problem would be that would cause this, and so I noticed that the drive teeth that pull the filament from the spool and push the filament out through the hot nozzle have been clogged up. These teeth of this gear, I would just take a pocket knife and kind of clean off the teeth of this gear. Now, it wasn't until one of my comments on a video that was talking about this that it was suggested that maybe this is caused by a clog in the end. The teeth are grinding the filament and pulling out chips into its teeth because it has to push harder to push through the clog. So, off to my user manual I went for how to clean a clog. And it began to work once again. But this time, however, after noticing this first failure, I did exactly that process. I cleaned out the printer's hot end and tried again. But then I was met with an even worse failure. But luckily enough, I think enough of these tests printed to kind of see what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get to the bottom of which of these settings work best, and I would prefer not to waste 2 hours worth of filament a third time, and I'll sort out this problem later. But by taking these models, all 4 of them, and comparing them, I have come to one conclusion. There seems to be very little difference in the outcome of all these models. I have been poking around in the settings earlier, and it seems the biggest difference in the 2 settings is temperature differences. So one might have the build surface a little hotter for a little longer, or cooling off a lot sooner. That way it would have better grip to the model itself, as well as kind of keep the filament a little bit more liquid as it's printing. So after noticing this failure, I believe there's enough of these examples, and enough has printed of these examples to kind of compare. And the only real difference that would come from all of these would be, for example, the bottoms of the chin, which luckily has printed on all 4 of these. Now, this model is a test print, which means it's meant to be one of the first things you print once your printer's assembled. And this would also mean, in this indication, that they're printed without support material. Like, the model itself is made in a way with special geometries and shapes to not need support material. Now, this leaves the overhanging parts exposed and liable to deforming. And there aren't many printers like mine that can excel at printing overhang. It's kind of one of the biggest drawbacks to FDM printers, or fused deposition modeling printers. Ones that work like hot glue guns. Well, in the end, I guess I'm just kind of left to merely trust that Prusament settings are providing me with the most reliable experience with printing, which is what I try to aim at getting by using the like-minded filament for my printer. Although this model keeps failing in the one place that I wish it wouldn't be, and these 2 failures are the Prusa settings with the Prusament, whereas the other 3 printed just fine. I really hope that this is like a general maintenance issue that has just come up after printing 5 of these in a row, and it's not necessarily down to the settings. But what do you think? Do you have a Prusa printer yourself that you've used? Or if not, have you used someone else's? If you have, what filament do you think works best? Do you think it's the Prusament brand? Now, the biggest question is, can anyone in the comments come up with what I can do with 3/4 of a sheep? Or 3/4 of 2 sheep? Leave them down in the comments, and thank you for watching. And thank you for joining me here on 3 Delirium, where we can all hallucinate about the possibilities of 3D printing. But I will see you next week.